Hello out there. My delight one more time to welcome you to this forum where I have a guest from any part of this planet. And then the guests will tell a story about how he or she went to a totally different culture and encountered some kind of experience which he or she would like to share on the forum. And most importantly, what did the person learn from it? Because it's by learning about other places that we can enjoy our world, understanding that things are different and we ought to respect those differences. And now my pleasure to welcome Valerie from what I call the other side of the world. Valerie is New Zealand. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you for the introduction. I'm very pleased to be here.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
right now I am still on Monday. So are you on Monday?
No, it's Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. here. So
Okay.
we're almost a day ahead of you now,
Right,
living in the
right.
future.
So as far as I'm concerned, your Christmas or whatever activity you're engaged in will come early.
Yeah, pretty much. That's it.
Everything. All right. Okay, just briefly introduce yourself and then we can start.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, my name is Dr. Valerie Cooper. I'm a lecturer here in Aotearoa, New Zealand at Te Herenga Waka, Victoria University of Wellington. And I've lived in New Zealand for about 6.5 years now.
Okay, so how are you doing lecturing?
Yes, exact. Or I think it's called assistant professor in the
Oh,
US.
yeah, okay, one of
It,
those titles.
yeah, it took me a little bit to figure out what each of these terms mean, but
I
I
mean,
think that's the equivalent.
right,
Teaching and researching.
across cultures. All right, what experience do you want to share?
Well, I'll tell a little bit about myself for context.
All right.
So I didn't have a passport until I was 20 years old, and
Okay.
I was a student at TCU.
Yeah.
So I feel
That's
like
Texas Christian University for people who don't know what it means. Okay, go ahead.
yes, excellent. So I feel like so much of my intercultural experiences were kind of me just catching up on what other people probably already knew.
Yeah.
So when I was 22, I joined the US Peace Corps and I moved to
Okay.
Mozambique for 3 years.
Okay.
Um, and then from there, I went and I did my master's degree in the UK. And after that, I did my PhD in Hong Kong.
All right.
Um, and that has led me here to New Zealand.
That's what I call crossing cultures. Mozambique, UK, Hong Kong,
Yep.
and now in New Zealand.
Yes.
Okay.
So I was trying to think back about like, I feel like my biggest encounters cross-culturally are things that have not only taught me about another place, but also things that have made me stop and think, well, wait, why does my culture do it differently as
Okay.
well? So probably one of the first encounters that came to my mind was when I moved to Mozambique for the first time. So I was in Mozambique at the behest of the US Peace Corps to teach English.
Okay.
And in preparation, we did a lot of language training in Portuguese, which is the language spoken around Mozambique.
Yeah.
And I get to Mozambique and I hear a lot of talking, and I'm like, well, that's not Portuguese, and I definitely know it's not English. Um, and I was vaguely made aware that there was another language there called Shangana.
Say it
So,
again. Shangana.
Shangana, yeah.
Okay. All right.
So one day I hear my students chatting back and forth and me thinking like, oh yeah, I'm cool. I know this now. I was like, oh, are you speaking in Shangana? Is that Shangana you're speaking? And the student goes, oh no, I speak Shangana, but we're actually speaking Songa now.
Oh,
And I was like, Songa? I was like, what's that one? And he says, oh, it's the language from the village like two villages over. And
okay.
I was like, wait, there's another language called Shangana and another called Songa, and you speak those languages too? And he says, yeah, and I also speak Ronga. And I was like,
It was
what's
getting
Russia?
complex.
Yeah. And he says, that's the one from the next province up. And so I asked, like, how many languages are spoken around here? And how many do you speak? And he says, oh, there's probably maybe like a dozen different languages spoken around here.
Yeah.
And I speak maybe five or six of them. And I was just floored. I'd always had this idea of like, you live in this country, you speak this language.
Okay.
And I had no idea that there was so many language dynamics in one place happening, and
You,
even that a person could know so many different
you
languages.
know, you know what? You should have gone to Nigeria where we have over 300 linguistic groups. And people
Right.
speak, they move from this one to another. You know, it's like weaving, bobbing and weaving in traffic. They can just speak so many. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
No, and that's it. And I think eventually I looked it up and there's 50 or 60
Six.
different languages. Yeah, spoken in Mozambique, depending on how you count, this is one language and this is another. And so I'm sitting here scratching my head, being like, okay, you've already got like 60 languages. Why am I teaching you English?
To, to
You've
add
got the language thing
language
covered.
number 61.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And also just questioning about how, like, well, wait a second, I only know English and some Portuguese now, and
Right,
and what's how come you get to have so many, and I'm here just this monolingual, only speaking one language.
right,
But that has come up again and again. When I moved to the UK, I spent some time in Scotland with a woman, and
right.
she says, "Oh, let me take you to the Scots College where everything is taught in the Scots language."
Ah,
And Scotland has its own language? And then I went to Wales and all of the signs are in Welsh.
right.
Um, and then, and when I went to Hong Kong, of course, they
Yeah,
speak Cantonese in Hong
right.
Kong. And I think there I really became aware of kind of language politics because in Hong Kong, the
Yeah,
university offered free classes in Mandarin Chinese,
yeah.
which is, the language of mainland
Hmm.
China,
Yeah.
but they didn't offer any Cantonese classes.
Huh.
Um, so I learned Mandarin there and I
Yes.
tried to speak to my Hong Kong flatmates and they were like, "What? I haven't studied Mandarin since high school. I don't know what you're saying."
Okay.
Um,
Okay. Let me ask you. Let me ask you. Now, how many languages do you speak right now?
oh, I will only claim Portuguese, bad Spanish,
Right.
uh, conversational Chinese.
Okay.
And since I've come to Aotearoa, New Zealand, I'm like, okay, I'm going to learn like a proper local language now. So I'm in the process of learning Te Reo Māori, which is the language here in New Zealand.
Is that the language of haka? The thing they call haka
Yes,
when they do when they do rugby.
exactly. Kamate, kamate. Yes, that's the one.
It's amazing that you set out as a teacher and then of languages, and then you became a student of languages.
Exactly. And that's it. So I'm always trying to soak in the languages because I found it like back in Mozambique too. As soon as I could learn like a few words, like how to ask for things in the market, I
Right.
would go and like be like, oh, "Nikombele mate" in the market or something. And the
Yeah.
women working at the market who spoke Shangana would be like, "Oh my God." Like they just thought it was the most hilarious thing. This,
Okay.
white girl
Right.
from the other side of the world speaking Shangana to them.
Right.
So,
I'm not very good at languages, but my younger brother speaks a couple of languages. He studied in Italy, so he's Italian, a little bit of French, Spanish, and
wow.
German. And he speaks a couple of languages. So at times you hear him, he starts with this sentence in this language and ends in another language. I say, so you've lost me there. Please, can we rewind? Okay.
That's that's so amazing. I'm so impressed that people
It's
can do that. I struggle with like one and a half languages.
Isn't our world amazing that we have all these languages and people are communicating in them?
Yes.
All right. Can we go to the second, if you're done with this, let's move to the second experience.
Yeah, so my second experience also thinking back to Mozambique,
Yeah.
and my first time living abroad, my first kind of encounter in this culture, and we were staying in a homestay
Yeah.
to learn the language. And it was coming to the end. We were going to have this big celebration of homestay where all of the families came together. And I had a little brother who, the night before the celebration, wanted to spend the night with a friend. So I said, okay, that's fine. And I spoke to the mother. And I, in my terrible Portuguese, was like, please make sure he comes home by 11 a.m. so we can go to the celebration together. And she's like, yep, okay, no problem. 11 a.m. So, of course, the next morning, 11 a.m. comes. I'm waiting for my homestay brother, and then 11:30 and 11:45.
Uh-huh.
And finally, at noon, I'm like, oh, I just need to go. Hopefully, he's already there.
Right.
And I start to walk out the door an hour late. Um, and I see my homestay brother and the mother come walking back. And I was kind of annoyed, that
Yeah.
they were coming so late. And so I just kind of said, "Well, what are you doing?" I said 11 a.m. and that was an hour ago now. Like why are you so late? What happened? Um and she looks at me like I'm crazy and just says, "I don't have a watch."
Okay.
And so I just stood there for a moment, just kind of blinking, being like, "Wait, what?" Um but then I was like, I can't argue with that. Yeah, if you don't
Just
have a
as
watch,
casually as that, I don't have a watch.
yeah, that's it. Like that was
What's your problem?
that's and I was like, and I had this moment of being like, I mean, I didn't check to make sure you had a watch ahead of time, but
Oh,
I very much assumed this was a thing that was normal. And this was 2009, so it wasn't even as common for everybody to have like cell phones and things like
right.
that too. So but that was a lesson in Mozambique that I learned that things don't happen by a clock. Things
Yes.
happen when like they're supposed to happen.
Right.
Um,
When they
kind of
feel
like,
like,
yeah, yeah, exactly. Even with the buses, there were buses around, but the buses didn't leave on a set schedule. The
yeah.
buses left when they were full.
Okay.
So it might take hours of you sitting there waiting on the bus, but the moment the last person got in, that bus took off. Or,
It links. So they live, in pidgin English. I've come from Nigeria. We say
yeah,
livable, winnable. When it's time for them to leave, they just leave. What's this?
yeah, that's it.
I had
And
somewhat similar experience in I think it was in Bangladesh, where I was supposed to teach in a classroom. The time came. I said, "What's going on?" They told me, "Professor, relax." So when the class was full, we started.
wow. And that's it, it's kind of like, well, when are we going to eat dinner? When it's cooked.
When it is
And
cooked,
yeah,
when
when is
it's
the
ready.
meeting going to start? When people get there. So it's just a very different system of time. And I had to just learn to like throw my watch out the window because a
Okay.
watch just doesn't matter anymore. So
I think you have lots and lots of experience. We'll need to do this again. I know. I tell you, I'm just dying of laughter here, but I want to thank you for the time, because we have some kind of time constraint, but I want to thank you. And I hope you're enjoying it in New Zealand. And we will definitely do it again because I'd like to share some of these experiences. And for anybody who is watching who wants to be part of this, all you need to do is to email me. The email address is crossculturalexperiences@gmail.com. Remember, experiences with an S, so that please don't tell me I don't have the time. Okay,
thank you
Valerie.
so much. It's been a pleasure. Take
Yeah,
care.
thank you, thank you. I have really, really enjoyed this, and we'll talk again. Enjoy the day and the week and the month
Yeah,
without your
and
without
enjoy.
your wristwatch.
Yes, doesn't matter. I'm on holiday now, so
Okay.